Hello. Good evening. Happy Saturday night to you. Mic check, mic check. Let me know how I'm coming through out there. Good evening. Today is the 28th of October. It's been a long day. A long day. Coached my son's soccer team today. Our first loss of the season. So it started out as a bad day. But we deserve to lose today. We were not unified as a team today, so that's all right. Sometimes you got to lose one to humble yourself. Otherwise, we're that's our first loss of the season. We got two games left. We're either first place or tied for first. As you can tell, I'm just rambling for a minute for some viewers to pop in. Then I went to took my little girls and my son to a trunk or treat, and they have a bubble machine and all these lights and smoke, and the little kids outside are just playing and having the best time. And I cannot sit there, and I took a billion photos of my girls, but I tell you, every single time I look at my kids, I feel a little bit of, I don't want to say it's guilt, but I feel something. I don't know what word to describe it. Where I know, here I am, fat and happy in America, nothing but first world problems like, oh, I lost a youth soccer game today, while across the Atlantic, there is mass murder of children going on. And if you have followed my Telegram channel, I don't post a whole lot there, but what I do post is, it's nightmarish. It's just video after video of children in Gaza that have been butchered by Israel. Bodies of all these little kids. And so every time I look at my little girls, I see the Palestinian children. And it fills me with two things. One, it fills me with incredible gratitude that I am one of the people who gets to raise my children without fear of bombs, hitting our house and killing us in the middle of the night. So I'm grateful, but it also just fills me with this anger. I want to do more. I want to do something. But I'm one person, just like you guys. I know out there you feel the same way. I'm one person. What can I do? And unfortunately, there's not much that one person can do alone. And thank you. Boulder Angel has put the Telegram channel in there. But please, I always give the disclaimer. It is not for the faint of heart. I guarantee you will be disturbed, even if you have a strong stomach and think you've seen it all. It will put images in your head that you won't be able to get out. It is the true horrifying face of warfare. But I do it as a journalistic service. You see this and it'll change you. It will change you. But don't say I didn't warn you. So I love my little girls. They are so sweet, so darling. I had them out there on we have, because there's two of them. These two little twin girls that they know to run opposite directions, so that my wife and I can't. We have to split. We have to go chasing them. They know if they go different directions, there's a chance that one of them will get away and go get what they want to do. So when we go out to public events like this, we have these little black harnesses that they wear, and we clip one of those retractable dog leashes to them. So we give them some distance to go play or whatever. But we can keep track of them. Otherwise, they get away from us. But I'll tell you, if someone did something to my little girls, I would never go back. I couldn't. I could never go back to being a normal person again. Not until justice had been done. And for the Palestinians, there's never justice. They never get justice. Israel is never held to account. Never held to account. Because they've got the world's bodyguard, the empire of the United States of America. While we are in rapid decline, we're still the top dog. We're still numero uno on the block. And if we are the ones out there bribing all of the Arab states, the Egyptians, everyone, keeping them in line, keeping them docile, keeping them from, standing up for the Palestinians, and then for the few times that the Palestinians do manage to make some progress in standing up for themselves, and we come in and say, oh, no, no, no. Israel has a right to defend itself. They've got no chance. The Palestinians have no chance. I was talking with someone earlier today about this. I have watched this issue closely, very closely, since 1996. I had some interest in the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, years before that, but I started looking at it more deeply around 96, around the time that they were, working on the Oslo Accords and stuff like that. But the 2006 events, the Israeli fighting with Lebanon, the 2008 Gaza war, the 2014 Gaza war is really the first big story that I covered on my my YouTube channel. I had done other things before that, but I've been watching this a long time, and I have seen no progress. I have seen the opposite of progress. I have seen the Palestinians lose more and more land. They're not getting their land back. They're losing more land, and the land loss is accelerating. I've also seen that Zionists have always been radical extremists, but they, just like a child will, if they want to defy their parents or a teacher or whatever, they start out easy. They'll poke a little bit. They'll test the waters if they've been told not to do something. But eventually, if they find that, wait a second, I did this and I got away with it, and then I did this and I got away with that, and they finally realize, you know what, it turns out that my parents were totally lying. They're not actually going to stop me. They're not going to do anything. And then they go crazy. That's Israel. For so many years, Israel has gotten away with the most abominable, heinous crimes against humanity. I cannot think, other than there are very few, maybe two incidents I can think of in modern history that parallel in just raw evil what Israel has been doing to the Palestinians, primarily since 1948 on forward. I can't emphasize enough, as someone who loves history, as a history major, I recognize that what we are seeing is significant history taking place, very significant history, and we are part of it. in the future, when people look back at our time, they're going to wonder kind of the things that we wonder about, like Nazi Germany. You look back and you wonder, how did a party that held no seats in the German parliament, the Nazi Party, National Socialists, how did they go from having no political power to, in a very short period of time, being the sole party in Germany, and then go on and do what they did? How? How could they do that? How could the people let this fascism take hold? Why did they not stop it? How did they get to the point where the whole world was embroiled in war, and the most horrific crimes were being committed? 11 million people were killed, give or take. 11 million people were killed in the Holocaust. The Holocaust was not uniquely Jewish. The Holocaust killed a lot of people. A lot of Poles who were not Jews were killed as well. A whole lot of people were killed. We only hear about the Jewish ones because, it disproportionately targeted Jews, of course. But the whole event, millions of people, regardless of the exact number, millions of people, mass graves where people are just taken and shot. Boom, 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 boom. A line of them. Bring another line up. Shoot them all. Another line. Just keep shooting. They fall on top of each other. If you are kind of a World War II junkie like I am, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the old footage, the mass graves, and how did the German people let this happen? Did they not see it? Did they not understand it? Well, very much like that. I think that 50 to 70 years from now, people are going to look back at our time and say of our generation, what the hell was wrong with those people? How could they see what Israel was doing to the Palestinians? And I don't mean just like the gradual, settlement building and land grabbing. I'm talking about these repeated cycles of mass murder. How could a civilized world allow this to happen? And how is it that the American people could be so blind by propaganda? A nation that claims to be Christian overall. How could a so-called Christian nation not just stand by and allow this to happen, but finance it and cheerlead it? People will look back at us and say, what the hell happened to those people? Just like we look back and wonder, how did the Nazis rise to power? How did all of that happen? And the people that it's the same with us. People get blinded by propaganda. And I'll tell you what, Israel, for all of its faults, and I guess this would be a fault too, but Israel are masters of propaganda. Masters of propaganda. One of the reasons they're masters of propaganda is because of the wealthy class that they have, who are loyal to the Zionist agenda, who are also heavily invested in the major media outlets in the West, not just here in the USA, but elsewhere. And then you've got the people who are, like Fox News is just insanely pro-Israel. You don't have to be Jewish to be Zionist. I mean, all of the Christian Zionists are probably Christian Zionists are not the worst of the Zionists, but they're the dumbest of the Zionists. They're the most gullible. And so it takes us learning the issues, learning, the history of the conflict. Why is there friction between Palestine and Israel? Why is it not getting fixed? Why does it keep going on and on and on? And we need to understand the issue well enough that when we have casual conversations around the water cooler at work or wherever, and the issue comes up, or we bring it up, which we should be doing, we can have intelligent, calm, rational conversations to people, with people who have very different opinions. Most people are probably going to be pro-Israel because that's just the dominant belief. I mean, we get a brand new Speaker of the House, and his first act as Speaker of the House is to call a foreign country that is committing genocide right now to let him know how much the American people are on his side. Benjamin Netanyahu is going to go down in history as the second worst tyrant after Hitler. At least if people like me have anything to say about it, that's going to be his legacy. Horrible, horrible human being. I started reading Netanyahu's speeches in 1995, and I thought then, this is a sharp guy. He is smart. He is cunning. He understands the American people, the American psyche. He understands what motivates us. He's a master manipulator. Early on, I thought he was a good politician. I did not know yet, way back then, how dastardly the man was. My eyes were not yet open to what Zionism really was. I thought I was a Zionist. I had a totally different definition from what Zionism actually is. I thought Zionism was just back then. I was teaching Old Testament. I was I was deep into the Christian faith at the time. I taught 5 days a week. I taught a college level course to high school students. It was unaccredited, but it counted towards certain universities credit, but an early morning Old Testament class before they went to school. They'd have an hour with me, and I dug into the history there, and I loved it. I loved the history of the Middle East, all of the lands involved in the stories of the Bible. And I knew that much of the Bible was not, in my opinion, and I'm sorry if I offend people, but a great deal of the Old Testament is not literal history. It is, there are references to things in the Old Testament that certainly happened, certain events and places and things, but much of the Old Testament was written while the Jews were in exile in Babylon. And so these stories were written well after the fact, a lot of them, and they borrowed heavily from the Babylonian mythologies, which came from a lot of them were Sumerian stories, and they were just repurposed. It was very common back then in the Levant and the further out for people to engage in what was called polemics. Basically propaganda. You take other people's stories and you twist it around and say, actually, your story, you believe your God did this, but what you don't know is our God was actually controlling your God and doing this. And they would say, well, you have your flood myth story, but actually the real version of it is this, which proves that our God was whatever. So I'm just saying that I was big into studying. I've got just rows of books on my bookcase about the history and the archaeology. I loved it. And so I thought that a Zionist was someone who appreciated that kind of history and was supportive of the idea of the state of Israel existing. That was all I understood. And I was not evangelical. I did go to a Baptist church for a handful of years, and so I was very familiar with very deep South, evangelical belief. I went to actually the church that I attended up in the mountains of North Carolina was the same church of Franklin Graham, the son of Reverend Billy Graham. And hey, I've got a very low opinion of Franklin Graham. But anyway, they're pretty extreme with their pro-Israel stuff. But I was more moderate. I didn't believe a lot of this stuff. But as I watched, I started looking at current events, and I was very interested in eschatology, the comparison of modern events and upcoming events in relation to past biblical prophecy. What is happening today that is a fulfillment of ancient prophecy? At least that's what I looked at. And when I first started my YouTube channel, that's why it was called End Times News Report, because I loved geopolitics. I loved the history and the current events of the Middle East. And I loved to compare my knowledge of what I thought were literal historical events in the Bible, some of them, and compare it to what was happening in modern times. My goal was not to preach to people that the Bible was true or not true. It was to say, look, here's this prophecy, and here's what's happening. And over the years, a lot of what I really came to believe is that while the Bible does have bearing on some of the events that happen, it's not so much because that the Bible accurately predicted what was happened, so much as there is a religious class today, Zionists primarily, but also evangelical Zionists, who understand the power of these religious based stories, and it's very easy to use those stories and apply them today and say this is a fulfillment. So if you talk to a Christian Zionist, for example, they are gung-ho, die-hard pro-Israel. I've got some family members who I can't, I've had to hide their social media accounts, because they've all, since the outbreak of this thing, they've all put up the Israeli flags and everything on their social media stuff, kind of like everyone did with Ukrainian flag. And I know why they do it. They don't understand a damn thing about what's actually going on over there, but they believe that these things happening are, fulfillment of prophecy and Israel, and God gave the land to the Jews and all that, which is complete misreading of what the Bible actually said. Bible never says anywhere, and I defy anyone to find it otherwise. The Bible does not say that God gave the land of Israel to the Jews. God made a covenant with Abram that the land would be for him and his descendants if they remained faithful to Yahweh. Abram was not a Jew. Abram, his name was changed to Abraham. He was Mesopotamian. If he's a literal figure from history, he was from Mesopotamia. He moved over and ended up in Egypt, which is where he and his wife, Sarah, picked up Hagar, who is an Egyptian. Abraham's firstborn child was Ishmael, through the Egyptian Hagar. It's right there in the Bible. His firstborn son. Sarah didn't, Sarah was very jealous, and so the story goes, they kicked Hagar and Ishmael out. Ishmael goes on to become the father of 12 sons, who become 12 princes, and from him the Arab peoples come from that line. And that's how the Arabs track their lineage back to Abraham, which means that Arabs are Semites. A Semite comes from the word Shem. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. After the flood, again, whether you believe this is literal or not, the story goes, Noah, his family, their wives, his sons and their wives, they all get on the ark. Everybody else in the world gets wiped out. And then they come off the ark and start repopulating the earth. The descendants of Shem go down to the Levant, and they start growing from there. Abraham was of the line of Shem. He is a direct descendant of Shem. So if you got Shem here, Abraham here, Abraham's children would be, and their descendants would be Shemites, which we call Semites. Abraham's first son, and Japheths go off to Europe, and Hams go down to Africa, which is the source of black skin, and blah, blah, blah. Whether it's true or not, that's the story. But the Shemites settle. You've got them in Mesopotamia. You've got them in the Levant. Abraham has Ishmael. Then, through Sarah, he has Isaac. Isaac marries Rebekah. They have Esau and Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, which is who the Jews come from, Issachar, Zebulun, Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali. 12 sons. And then Jacob's name is changed to Israel. So Israel, the word Israel, is the new name of the patriarch Jacob. So you've got over here in Arabia, you've got this, 12 sons of Ishmael, and the Arab peoples, and they're growing. Those are Shemites. Then you've got the 12 tribes. They end up having ongoing civil war. They hated each other. The tribes hated each other when they were in Canaan. They broke almost immediately into two nations. You've got the kingdom of Israel in the north, which are 10 tribes. Then in the south, you've got the kingdom of Judah, which would be Judah, half the tribe of Benjamin, and they're at odds all the time, and that's why the Old Testament is full of stories from two different groups of people. The northern people, the kingdom of Israel, are allegedly pretty bad. Now remember, the people writing this are the people who were the Jews later on. We'll get to that. And so history gets written in a way that the tribes of the north, they're pagan, they worship false gods, they all this stuff. But the Jews, they're faithful to the one true God. Well, Assyria comes over and wipes out, which is historical fact. Syria wipes out the northern kingdom, takes them off. Then you have this remnant for about 100 or so years remaining, just the kingdom of Judah. And they get all high and mighty, and they're not going to pay tribute to Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. And so he comes over and he sacks the kingdom of Judah, and he removes them and takes them back to Babylon. And so the Jews are removed from the land. There's the Israelites. You could be an Israelite and not be a Jew. If you were from the tribe of Reuben, you were not a Jew. If you were from the tribe of Ephraim, Joseph in the Old Testament, he has two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And because he's got like the birthright, he gets this double portion of land and all this. And so it's split between his two sons. But anyway, the northern kingdom of Israel was also dominated by the tribe Ephraim. But they weren't Jews. And so you've got all this time passing, the majority of the Bible time, from Genesis up through, toward the end, roughly 600 BC approximately, is when Judah gets sacked and taken off. They're not Jews. I mean, there are Jews among the 12 tribes. So the idea that the Bible is all about the Jews it's just not true. No Bible scholar is going to agree with that. But when they're in Babylon, the priestly class, which exerts its control, kind of like today in Israel, the disproportionate control of the religious class, even though, as the Gallup poll showed, Israel is one of the least religious nations in the world. I mean, you hear about the Jews all the time. You think, oh, they must be religious. They've got the highest proportion of atheists outside of, like, I'm talking about way over communist China and all that. But I mean from like the West, least religious. But they are dominated. Their politics are dominated by a fairly small class of religious extremists who have their hooks into the political system. They're very powerful. Well, back then in Old Testament times, same thing. The Jews get carried off. And why? Why did we get carried off? The Bible was not all compiled at that point. It wasn't written. And so they go to write their history. And that's when most of the Bible was written. Not thousands of years before. It's not like there was, the stories of Moses and everything were around and they had it for thousands of years and or of Abraham and all that. A lot of this was kind of backdated as they crafted a lot of the stories to give them this. So think of it this way: if the Bible is literally true, what do we know about what the Israelites did? What Moses led the Israelites, so the story goes, out of Egyptian bondage through the Sinai Peninsula, across the Red Sea. They wander in the wilderness for 40 years because they're not righteous. They're not allowed to enter into Canaan. But finally they can. Moses isn't allowed to go in, so Joshua leads the people in. They enter in. They sack Jericho. They march around, blow their trumpets. The walls come tumbling down. And they go city by city through Canaan, committing genocide. The Bible makes it very clear. Yahweh commands the people, you don't keep anyone alive. The Bible explicitly says, Israelites, as you go through from city to city, I have given you all of this land. Go in and kill them all. Do not spare anyone. You kill the women, you kill the children, you kill their animals. Kill everything. Wipe every bit of life out, and then you can take possession of the land. And so one of the stories is at a certain point when these tribes are like, look, all these people around us, they've got kings. We want to be a unified people with a king. And the prophet Samuel's like, no, don't do that. Don't be like these other heathen nations. Let God be your king. And they're like, no, we want a king. So they take someone from the tribe of Benjamin, a man named Saul, and he becomes the first king of Israel. But Saul is, he's not a great guy. And one of the things that he does is at a certain point, they're supposed to go in and sack a city and kill everyone. Well, Saul allows his men to keep a lot of the people alive and take them prisoner as slaves. And so when Samuel arrives and finds that this rival king is still alive and he's a prisoner, Samuel says, what the hell is this? Don't you know God told you to kill everybody? And so Samuel in the Bible takes a sword and chops off the head of this rival king and says, God, because you have defied God's order to commit genocide, Saul, you are going to be removed. And that's when Samuel goes and it finds the little shepherd boy David and anoints him. And then you've got this drama that goes on for a while as the little boy David, who goes and slays Goliath. He has this back and forth with Saul over time until David becomes the king. So the Bible is brimming with stories of God-sanctioned genocide. A couple of days ago, maybe it was even yesterday, I watched a video clip on Twitter of a Jewish, I don't know if he's a politician. I think that he's he's a government official. But anyway, I was reading the translation because I don't speak Hebrew. But he was on TV screaming on a news channel. He was being interviewed on a major news channel. screaming about how um, the Jews have not fulfilled the the mandate given by God in the Bible for the Jews to do to the modern Palestinians what God had the Israelites do in ancient times to their enemies that were in the way on the land that God, gave them. And so he's just openly calling for genocide. And he says, kill them all. We need to kill them all. He called for an inferno to incinerate them. Oh, yeah, he compared it to Dresden. I don't know if you may know from World War II, we went in, the Allies, especially USA, firebombed the German city of Dresden and turned it into a raging Holocaust, just burned tens of thousands of people, set the city on fire, and they couldn't get away. There was so much fire and so much wind being generated from these fires, it created tornadoes, fire tornadoes that went around and just tens of thousands of people killed in Dresden. That's what this Israeli guy was saying. Oh yeah, Boulder Angel says she saw that. I can't remember if he was a government official or who he was, but that's a dominant idea, and so this idea that God wants His chosen people to commit genocide. Now, I always looked at the Bible in a unique way, different from how the Christians around me did. Because I never believed that a God would exist that would tell his people to go massacre babies because they're on the land. I'm giving you this land. I'm too weak as a God to give it to you. So you have to go in and kill the babies that are on the land because that's how I roll. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be born and I'm Jesus, a pacifist who says turn the other cheek and love your neighbor. But I also want you to kill everybody's children and their wives and slaughter everyone. It doesn't fit together. So what a lot of these stories were, in my opinion, based on my studies over the decades I've studied this stuff, is that while in exile, you've got these humiliated Jews from Judah, the kingdom of Judah, who thought so highly of themselves, and yet they got their butts whooped like that. They get carted off, utterly humiliated. So they're like, so what the priestly class did was they said, the reason this happened is because you people, you commoners, did not listen to us. We are the religious authorities. If you had obeyed the laws that we gave you, that we told you came from God, if you had done things and followed all of the Mosaic, these prescribed whatever that we are saying, this wouldn't have happened. And if you ever want to go back, if you want to get out of captivity and go back, you better recognize us and you better do what we say. And then they maintained this iron hold on the people once they did go back and rebuilt the walls and did, they built the temple of Zerubbabel, that predated the it was like a crappy version of the Temple of Solomon until eventually Herod had the temple rebuilt, thinking that would get the people on his side. But anyway, I just I see the way that religion is being used today to convince masses of Christians around the world, but especially in the West, in the UK and the United States, Canada, convincing Christians that it is God's will for Israel to take all of these lands that the Palestinians are on, and by any means necessary, because in the Bible, God was like, well, go kill everyone, take it from them. That's God's way. So that's why you have to be very careful as a believer not to take some things too literally. There's a lot that you can believe there's a lot that's just faith promoting and wonderful about the Bible, but it can also, if you're not careful, you can allow yourself to be led down bad paths and manipulated by people who use religion to justify committing heinous crimes that no God, except for, the devil, that no God should ever sanction or call on his people to do. So anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent. I think my point is Israel has a great, powerful propaganda machine, and we have to be evangelicals. We have to evangelize. I don't mean religiously, but the truth. We have to be emissaries of the truth. We have to be missionaries spreading knowledge of the true history of this region, of how we got in this process, in this cycle of never-ending violence, because people only know tiny parts of the story. It's kind of like the Ukraine conflict. The only thing people in the West are allowed to know is that Vladimir Putin, for no reason, went into Ukraine and just attacked, and he's barbaric and everything else. You're not allowed to know the details about everything that happened leading up to that. It's just that one thing. From this point forward, believe us. Anything prior to that, the people are Russian propagandists. Same with the issue of Israel and Palestine. We're not supposed to ask what happened leading up to October 7th. What precipitated the terrorist actions of Hamas on October 7th? Can't ask. And truly, there is nothing that justifies going out doing what this is. I strongly believe this, and I butt heads sometimes with people that are pro-Palestine. I don't even try to justify what Hamas did on October 7th. There are people out there saying it's all false flag. Hamas didn't actually do this, and whatever. Well, certainly some of it's propaganda. I mean, we know the 40 decapitated babies and all that. That's all baloney. That doesn't mean that Hamas didn't go in and slaughter a bunch of Israeli citizens. They certainly did. But the issue is, what I say is I quickly dismiss that. I say, I'm in agreement with you. If I'm talking to someone who's like, oh, you're pro-Hamas. No, I'm not. I don't sanction the butchery of any innocent person. And I don't try and make the argument, oh, well, the Jewish people were, some of them were settlers and they're on stolen land, and so they're not innocent, so they're fair game. Nope, not going to hear that argument from me. You don't kill people. You don't go around committing massacres of civilians. But so I just, the Bible even says, agree with thine adversary quickly while thou art in the way, which is actually a pretty good strategy when it comes to debate and dialogue. Find areas where you can quickly agree with people. Now, if you convey to someone, if you're going to have a conversation with someone on a contentious issue, the first thing you want to do is not try and get your point across, because it's a contentious issue. They don't want to hear what you have to say. They want you to hear what they have to say. And you both can't hear each other at the same time. So early on in a dialogue, you want to find where you can agree with each other. And so if I'm talking to someone about this, they're like, how can you, justify, the killing? Oh, Israel is doing this because they were attacked first. All right, well, let me clear some things up. First of all, I totally disagree with what Hamas did. I think Hamas is an impediment to the peace process. I think Hamas is going to be in the way of Palestine ever getting statehood. So I am not a Hamas supporter. I could go off the rails, and get into the parts of the good things that Hamas does with regard to social services and education and things that they do. But that's not a winning that's not a winning argument. That's not the issue. The issue is Al-Qassam Brigade's militants went and killed a bunch of Jews. And you're never going to convince anyone that it was okay to do that, because it's not. It's not a winning argument. So don't try to. Don't ever feel like, oh, geez, I personally kind of don't think that was a good thing that happened. But if I waffle on that or don't, if I don't find a way of explaining that away or justifying it, it's going to seem like I'm losing the argument. No, 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 no. You don't win an argument by taking a bad position. You just say, I condemn it. I don't agree with it. But what I want from you is to hear me now. And I want you to hear me when I say that killing thousands of children in response to what those Hamas militants did, you cannot justify that morally. Would you agree with me on that? And they may agree if they're civil people, or they may be still in their propaganda mindset. They may say, well, Hamas mixes in and they use the people as human shields, and you can't help but accidentally kill them. That's when you can start to explain facts if you know them in a dispassionate way. But you have to have a knowledge of the stories, of the issues. That's what I'm here for, is to teach and provide that information, the background. And you'll hear me say some of the same things over and over and over again. It's not because I don't have other things to talk about. I've done over 2,000 videos at this point, many of them, a couple hours long. Like, I can talk forever. You can get me talking about anything, even if I have no friggin' clue what I'm talking about. That's how we trained back when I did speech and debate in high school. My teacher would take at the beginning of class. We had a very small class. There were three of us. Me as a freshman, two seniors. One of the two seniors was the East Coast debate champion. Guy was incredible. It was also good for mentoring me. But we would start the class. Our teacher, Mrs. Harrison, would take a box, a shoe box. The three of us would each, she'd have us take, think of the first 4 topics that would pop in our heads, write them on these slips of paper. And so whatever I was thinking about that day, computer hacking, I wrote down, Spider-Man, these comics, these different things. We would fold them, put them in the box. She'd shake it up, call one of us up to the front of the room, have us pull a piece of paper out, whatever the topic was, immediately give a 3 to 5 minute extemporaneous speech on it. No preparation. The point was not like demonstrate how much you know. The point was show that you can talk and BS your way through, think on your feet and BS your way through stuff. That's what it was. The point I'm trying to make here is I can talk. But the reason I repeat certain things over and over in my presentations to you is because repetition brings it helps things to sink in, it helps you to learn it, and it helps you to repeat it. And I see myself not just as somebody trying to entertain you. I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to help you to learn. I want you to be better off after you have listened to something that I've said, rather than just being entertained. You can go turn on Disney Plus and watch Obi-Wan or Mandalorian or something and be entertained, but you don't come away having really learned something where you can go out and engage. You can have good conversations with people, I guess, with similar interests. But I want you to go away having learned and grown so that you can contribute on issues that matter out there. So I'm going to pause here and just review some of the chat stuff, and then maybe throw out a couple ideas of what I can talk about from here forward, and have you guys we'll go from wherever. But let me look here. All right, I'm just skipping back here. Aaron S., how do you have 200,000 subs and no super chat options? I actually had close to 230,000 subs before YouTube started deleting and took away all of my monetization options, because I say things that they don't like. That's why. I don't cuss, although the last couple of months I've been using the words damn and hell more frequently, but you won't find me using the S word, the F word, nothing. I don't insult people individually. I don't talk about the Jews in a bad way. I just give a different side of issues that are unpopular with the powers that be. And my voice was reaching a lot of people. I was getting millions of views per month on my channel. And can't have that. They wrote some hit pieces about me and in different places, Wall Street Journal. I mean, everywhere, everywhere. So I get no, like right now I've got 435 viewers. I know it's 11:30 at night, but I used to have, you guys know it, that have been around forever. We'd be sitting here with 1,500 to 2,000 viewers every live stream. And a lot of you out there would give super chat donations, which I, was very happy to have that. But YouTube so cracked down on my channel, and then Twitter did the same thing, and Facebook, and it got to where I was making almost nothing, no matter how much I was producing, content I was putting out. The only way that I earn any income, since there's no advertising revenue and there's no super chat options or anything like that, only thing that works is if people go sign up through Patreon or make donations through PayPal. And by the way, I there's so many of you I need to thank, but I want to let me cover up the name. I did get this this in the mail from a gentleman named Galen with a kind donation. Thank you very much. By the way, if anyone wants to send me a letter or send something to me to read, write to me at Jake Morphonios, P.O. Box 1333, Kernersville, North Carolina 27285. Should be down scrolling down there. But I am back now. This issue brought me out of retirement. This mess going on in Palestine right now. So I'm glad to be back and talking about this stuff. All right. What else here? Oh, watching from Holland. Very nice. Yeah, paradigm shift. Yes, we keep going through these rapid paradigm shifts. Thank you, Friendly Brilliant, who says, I tune in late, but this seems like a good live stream. I've been sharing some of your videos lately. Aaron S., did you visit Israel with Adam Greenberg? I'm not going to call anyone a name like Greenberg. People misunderstand. I did not go to Israel with Adam. I had no idea who Adam was up until this. There's an organization, and I won't put their name out, but there's a pro-Palestinian organization that does like the pro-Israel organizations out there. They pay for, I think they're called aliyahs, where they take people from the United States, whatever, and see stuff, and it's supposed to build your knowledge of whatever, and they also try and get you to be pro-Israel. Well, there are also organizations that do the same thing, where they want you to learn about the plight of the Palestinian people. And so sometimes what they'll do is they'll look and find people that they think would be good voices to share the message of what you see. So a representative from the organization who shows up in the chat here. Actually, I won't call her out. I don't know if she wants me to or not. But someone who watched my videos, I had never talked to this person before, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we'd like to sponsor you to go to Palestine. 10-day trip to Palestine. Would you be interested?" I didn't respond at first because I thought it was not true. Like I was getting a lot of stuff, a lot of scam type stuff from Zionists back then. I still do. It's really started up again. But back then they were writing hit pieces with Canary Mission, and all the Zionist groups were right. So I was like, whatever. And probably a couple weeks passed, and I got another message. I'm like, what is this? Let me look into this. And I I'm like, is this serious? And I looked in the organization. I saw, I'm like, okay, well, hey, they're willing to take me over there and meet people. And I understood that there would be some other people going. I did not know who else was going until eventually, after I had already agreed to do it and so forth. Then I found out, some of the other people going, and then there was someone named Adam Green going. And I think that by then I had seen um, a video or two of his. I don't know. I don't remember if I had known him before that or not. But that's the first time that I had ever spoken with Adam. Now, between and once we found out we were both sponsored to go, um, we ended up talking more. But anyway, yeah, we both ended up out there, and we talked a little bit when we were out there. But actually, when I was in Palestine, the majority of the time I was off by myself. I spent as much time as I could one on one with the people that we met, and it was a fantastic program, incredible. It wasn't there wasn't much touristy stuff, but there was we met. Had the chance to meet with politicians, with civic leaders, all walks of life. Went out with Palestinian farmers. Went to different sites. It was great. But I spent the majority of my time kind of off on my own here, getting footage, doing things, and talking with people. And it was just a great thing. So anyway, I'm just saying I've heard this so many times ever since then. Oh, you and Adam Green went together. We both were there. Yes, we did not go together to it. Um, and I think after we got back, I when we were there, he's like, "Hey, let's do a thing." I'm like, all right, because we were up somewhere across. We were near Al Aqsa Mosque, and he was recording something. Like, hey, let's do a video. I'm like, all right. So he does his thing. He's like, here's Jake. I'm like, hi, I'm Jake, um, and then after it was over, I think we did I was a guest on his show or something, or leading up to it before we left. I don't know, something like that. And then we talked a couple of times, private messaging back and forth a few times, because we were both taking pretty heavy fire from the Israel lobby, and but that's about it. I don't think I've talked to Adam in about 3 or 4 years, something like that. I don't even know if he's on YouTube or where he is. I have no idea. But anyway, somehow, because we both were on that trip at the same time, we ended up somehow joined at the hip in everybody's mind. I think we both have different styles of communicating the issues. So anyway, that's all I know. That's all I know. I don't have anything bad to say about anyone that was on the trip or anything. I'm a loner. I don't know if you've noticed that from my from my work. I prefer it. I prefer to do my own thing. I want full control over what I say, what I do, where I go, to the fullest extent possible. I'm very, very much a lone wolf. I work a lot with people, um, especially with my contacts, but it's very time consuming to get the information, to maintain enough of the associations over time, because we can go months upon months upon months where I don't need to speak with a certain person. I'm at, contact in Somalia. I don't need to talk to that person when there's no pressing issue for me to report on. But I spent a lot of my time, I would just reaching out to contacts, just a quick hi, how are you, and I hope you're doing well, to maintain the relationship, so that when something does happen, like, oh crap, there's something, I think there's a CIA op going down in Somalia, I can reach in and talk to the attorney, the government attorney there. Actually, that the attorney was in Sudan, not Somalia, but anyway. Um, this Aaron S. Let me boot this idiot. I almost feel bad for Jake because he is so bad at refuting his Fed connections. He sweats bullets every time. Yeah, I'm sweating bullets because my Fed connections. All right. I forgot a lot of this stuff because it's been a while since I've done the live streams. The you know, the CIA pays me and every this and that and whatever. Lee Newton Rhodes, what happened on October 7th? Who is to blame? Well, many Israelis blame Benjamin Netanyahu for it. Um, I Friendly Brilliant says, I think Israel orchestrated October 7th. They created Hamas and have people in Hamas. My opinion is not that Israel did it, like they were the ones who created it and everything. But what Israel does is they provoke. They create the problem. They create the problem. And then through manipulating. So when people say Israel created Hamas, that is that, and I say that, and a lot of people say that because a lot of there's truth to it. They did not go and say, you know what, let's start an organization, call it Hamas, create it, all of us, and then it's a whole fake organization. It's a real thing, but there was an organic aspect to it too. It's just that they kind of like, there were a lot of mujahideen from around the Arab world who went to Afghanistan to fight against the Soviets in Afghanistan, to drive the Soviets out. We didn't create that, but we capitalized on it. And the CIA brought a very wealthy Saudi, Osama bin Laden, with vast connections. He came from a construction family. They were billionaires from construction. And he had the money, and he was smart. He was Western educated, very sharp guy. And so we put Osama bin Laden to work as the bag man. Osama bin Laden was not the guy who was running Al Qaeda, but he was the guy that we were funneling the money to, that the CIA was funneling money to fund. He would distribute it. And as you know, from how we see here in US politics, the person who has the money, they're the ones that you're going to kiss up to. Kind of like, no one had heard of this Mike Johnson guy in the US House. Nobody wanted him to be speaker. They wanted uh get rid of Kevin McCarthy, and then they want Steve Scalise, and oh no, Jim Jordan. No, nobody was out there banging the drums for this guy. It's just that he went down the list, and finally there's this guy. But as soon as Mike Johnson gets in there, you see picture after picture after picture of the most ambitious people in the U.S. House on the Republican side, all of them putting their faces in to get selfies, and then they put it on their social media stuff. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, all of them, all the people that typically among the MAGA crowd who want the publicity and everything. That's because where the power is, you want to connect to that so that you can ride the coattails. Osama bin Laden was like that. He had the money. And of course, as a guy who with vast wealth and connections, who was receiving the money, they were funneling it through banks there that they could get to. I can't remember the name of the bank off the top of my head. Dang it. I've talked about it so many times. But anyway, he helped to network with the various mujahideen groups, and they formed this network together. The CIA did not create it. Now, they financed it, they made it possible, they empowered it, and they also got their hooks in to bin Laden and the network to use, since they were giving the money, well, you do what we want. We're fighting the Soviets too, so you go where we send you and you do this, and we're going to give you money to do this. We're going to give you these weapons, you do this. And so in that sense, we created Al-Qaeda, and in that sense, we controlled Al-Qaeda. Much the same way with Hamas. Israel financed and encouraged the growth of Hamas. They're linked to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, is how it started. Hamas rose. Everybody now thinks of Hamas as it's a terror group like ISIS or Al Qaeda. That's not the case. It does have that paramilitary. The Al Qassam brigades is their militant wing that carries out these things. Look at this guy, nuke Gaza. Let me hide him real quick. Millie, thank you for showing us what what a Zionist is. But Hamas starts out, they're growing as a counterweight to Fatah. Fatah was the political party backed by Yasser Arafat. He was the chairman of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So basically, after the Ottoman Empire had collapsed after World War I, they chopped everything up. You've got all these new Arab states. Well, the Arabs, the various Arab states had kind of a network, a council, where they were kind of collectively in charge of the affairs of the region of Palestine, defending the Palestinians against the Israelis and that kind of thing. Eventually, one of the kind of a committee that rose to prominence that was made up primarily of various actual Palestinian factions was called took on prominence. Originally, this whole thing was called the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, these various Arab groups. But Yasser Arafat comes in, and he is made the chairman of the organization. He goes to Palestine, and now it's based there, and the Arab nations can kind of wash their hands and let him take over. And so you've got all of these different factions. The dominant political faction under the PLO umbrella was the Fatah party. It was secular, and it still is. There are Christian members of the Palestinian parliament in the Fatah party. So it's not, that's different from Hamas. Hamas is an Islamist party. They want Sharia, they want, they push a lot of religious strictness over in Gaza and all this. But anyway, they're rising at a time when the people over in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, they're losing confidence in the ability of the ruling Fatah party to make any significant gains toward independence, or specifically to loosen the harsh restrictions that they were living under in Gaza. What they didn't realize at that time is that Israel was actively funding the rise of Hamas in order to try and split the unity of the Palestinian movement. They wanted to kill the increasing progress the Palestinians were making towards statehood. And so the creation of Hamas or the funding, the encouragement, the growth of Hamas was very much on the agenda of Israel. And it's not a conspiracy theory. There's a lot of different Israeli officials who have admitted this on record. There was a Brigadier General Yitzhak Segev. Brigadier General Yitzhak Segev. He was Israel's military governor over Gaza during the 1980s. Well, he told the New York Times, he went on record. He did an interview. He said, "Yeah, we financed the Palestinian Islamist movement." He said, as a counterweight, he called it a counterweight against the secularists and the leftists in the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and the dominant party, which was Fatah, led by Yasser Arafat. Arafat himself, the chairman of the PLO, called Hamas a creature of Israel. So General Segev had told the Times that what the government did was they gave him a budget, a certain amount of money. And what he would do is he would funnel that money through the mosques over in Gaza that he was over as the governor to these Hamas extremists to build and grow. And there was another guy that I can think of, a former religious affairs boss for Israel, Avner Cohen. He had worked for decades in Gaza, and he also gave an interview. It was in 2009. He talked to the Wall Street Journal, and it's still out there. People can look it up and read it. And he said that he was so concerned about what was happening, Israel's funding of the growth of Hamas, that he wrote an official report to his superiors in the government telling them that while it seemed like a good idea, this divide and conquer thing, pitting the Islamists of Hamas against the secularists of Fatah and the other parties, that eventually this Islamist monster was going to get out of hand and would end up tormenting Israel, and they wouldn't be able to go back. And he said, but, they totally ignored my concerns. But anyway, so the result of Hamas's growth and their success, because of the fueling of their rise by Israel, is that in January 2006, their kind of national, if you could call it national, Palestinian elections, Hamas won the majority of the seats. They had never been the dominant party, but they won in 2006. And because they were the dominant party, they got to decide kind of like when we elect a Democrat as president or a Republican as president in the United States, they get to appoint their own loyalists into the various cabinets and agencies to run it. And so you're going to appoint people that are loyal to your way of doing it. So you get Hamas, they win these elections in January 2006, and then they appointed a Hamas Islamist government for all of the Palestinian territories there. And they excluded Fatah and the secularists from it. This booted out of power Mahmoud Abbas, who is he's not the PLO chairman, but he's kind of like the head of the Fatah party after Arafat. So Israel's out there, we're outraged. The United States, this is outrage. That's when the United States designates Hamas as a terrorist organization. And they're very public condemning Hamas, despite privately they're the ones that helped Hamas grow. But privately, publicly they're out there with their crocodile tears. Privately, they're high-fiving each other because this is what they wanted. They split the Palestinian independence movement right down the middle. It'd be like if we had, if the 2020 election, who won? Was it Biden or was it Trump? How about we do a co-presidency and make Joe Biden and Donald Trump co-equal presidents? How much do you think those two knuckleheads would get done? They would be constantly canceling each other out, right? I mean, we'd get nowhere. There'd be nothing between their two sides, and so that's what you've got. You've got no progress going on. Hamas, the reason that this was significant in 2006 is that throughout the 1990s, you've got some major developments. Yasser Arafat really came around to, up until the 1990s, it was the position of the PLO that Israel did not have a right to exist. They refused to acknowledge the political status of Israel, saying it's a non legitimate government. We don't acknowledge it, we don't recognize it. So one of the things that they did in the 90s was Arafat, on behalf of the Palestinian movement, made some concessions. And one of the concessions was he acknowledged Israel as a state has the right to exist. And so the goal would no longer be to eradicate Israel, among other things. And Israel made some concessions that there was the creation of what's called the Palestinian Authority, which is it's kind of a practice government. They already had a government, the Palestinians did, but this was kind of a new one that Israel could have some influence over. But, Palestine, Arafat agreed to that. Well, when Hamas won, and so that led to a little progress towards statehood, which Israel turned around and reneged on and, totally torpedoed all the progress. But because there was momentum to try and keep it going, and there was kind of international consensus with these Oslo Accords of the 90s that, they were making progress, Israel wanted Hamas to win power because you don't have to negotiate with a Hamas government, because Hamas refuses to acknowledge that Israel has a right to exist, or at least, they did at that point. So you've got this brand new government, and so Israel says, we will not engage in any negotiations on the future of Palestine with Hamas in power. But that's what they wanted. They don't want Palestinian statehood. But this was a sneaky way of being able to say, see there, Hamas is in charge. We can't we can't negotiate with them. Same with the United States. The United States says we will not work with a Hamas government. And so a lot of the aid that the United States was sending to to the Palestinians was withdrawn. So you end up with the former power, the Fatah party and the other factions. They start really going at it with Hamas. And this is exactly what Israel wanted, and they stoked it. And so Hamas, they're trying to take a hard line. You've got Fatah, who's more secular. Secular, in case you don't know, that means they're not religious based. Okay, they've got a plurality of religions. They don't care. It's not about the religion. Kind of separation of church and state. Kind of that idea. But so you've got Hamas. They're now the ones in control of this Palestinian Authority. So Fatah and Hamas, they end up in essentially a civil war all throughout 2007. Incredible dysfunction that escalates into several months, at least half a year of fighting between the two sides, an actual civil war. So Israel's absolutely delighted at this. But in 2007, eventually, there's like a truce between Hamas and Fatah, and they agree to form a unity government, because you've got Abbas over here, and I can't remember who the Hamas leader was at the time, But they're finally like, all right, look, let's get along. We'll try. But things continue to break down. They just can't agree on anything. And so it culminates in what was called the Battle of Gaza, in which Hamas took complete control over the Gaza Strip. And Fatah was able to consolidate control over the West Bank. Fatah and their allies, government allies. And so ever since 2006, we have had, 2007, Hamas has controlled Gaza. Fatah has controlled the West Bank, but they are not unified. They don't acknowledge each other's authority. They have dual. Like Abbas says, he is the true leader over all of the territories, including Gaza, and Hamas says, no, we are the real leaders. We were elected. You just didn't like the outcome of the elections, and so they don't agree. Stuck in the middle are all of the regular people who, just like us, for the most part, you don't care. It's just really a Game of Thrones between these competing, politicians. Now, in the midst of this chaos, though, that's when Israel said, now's the time. Yeah, I'm displaying a text T3X42 chick. He's displaying a Palestinian flag. He should be over helping to defend them. Well, you know what? I couldn't get into Palestine if I tried. You know why? Because I went over there one time, and those bloody Zionists banned me from returning. Why? Because I'm a truth-telling journalist. But you go ahead and take the side of the apartheid regime. How about that? I swear, these people. All right. But anyway, what was I blathering on about? I don't even know. I just glanced over at my screen over here to see this. So I see Hamas as an impediment to Palestinian statehood. No one in the international community is going to legitimize Hamas because Hamas, they took things backwards. There was so much progress made toward, political progress made, hard-fought political progress that Israel doesn't really want to go along with. But at least there was a semblance of progress, and there was growing international consensus that now's the time, we can finally resolve this issue. But a Hamas comes in and says, nope, I'm going to hit reset. We're going to go back to start. Screw you, Israel. You can't exist. We don't acknowledge you. We're going to take Jerusalem from you. We're going to drive, all of you out from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. It's a fine motto, and that's not just a Hamas motto, but it's idealistic. It's idealistic. It's never going to happen. It would be like, Trump supporters or Biden supporters saying, what would be good for our country is if we just got rid of the other party. And then our agenda, we can have whatever we want, blah, blah, blah. You can talk about it all you want. It's not going to happen. You have to deal with the issue in reality. And the reality is Palestine has to coexist with Israel. The reality is Israel has to coexist with Palestine. They have to figure out how to coexist. Now, you can do it one of two ways. You can do it as a single state where you take the Palestinians, take the whole region, the whole, everything that is currently Israeli or Palestinian territory, make it one nation, equal rights, get rid of apartheid, equal rights for everyone. That means, one person, one vote. Doesn't matter if you're Jewish, doesn't matter if you're Arab, you all vote. Majority rules determines the government. Well, the problem is there are more Arab Palestinians than there are Jews altogether. So that's why Israel does not want to go along with a one-state solution, because they would lose power, and because they're bloody racist and they just don't like Arabs, and a lot of them. Don't let me broad brush everybody. Not all Israelis are like that, but a lot of them are. And polls prove it, independent polls. They don't want to live in the same apartment complexes with a Palestinian. They don't want, they would disown family members if they, dated an Arab, like just overtly racist stuff. So that's the one state idea. The two state idea is you go back to the borders that existed, and Arafat and Fatah and the majority of the Palestinians were okay with this idea. You go back to with the two-state solution, go back to 1967, before Israel won the 1967 war, and took a whole bunch of land. Go back to the land as it existed prior to that war and use that territory as it was then, lock it in, and that is the state of Palestine. And then Israel, what land that they had accumulated, whether it was legitimately, obtained or not, the reality is you're not going to get rid of the millions of Jews that are there. They're there for good. They're not going to leave, and you can't kill them all. That would be genocide. It's just reality. You can't kill all the Palestinians. You can't kill all the Jews. They have to have their own states. So you have the Palestinian state based on the pre-1967 war boundaries. And there's two big issues that would have to also be resolved. One is the status of Jerusalem. Jews want Jerusalem to be their capital. Palestinians want Jerusalem to be their capital. You can't have it both ways, to have all of Jerusalem. Currently, in 1967, when Israel went grabbing land, they tried to take all of Jerusalem, and they couldn't. They got part of Jerusalem. East Jerusalem, they could not drive the Palestinians out, but they do occupy it militarily. They have not annexed it, but they do have military occupation over East Jerusalem. Under the original UN charter that kind of proposed what to do, their original proposal was, here's the Palestinian land, and it was a whole lot more than this 1967, pre-war border stuff. But here's the Palestinian land, here's the Israeli land, and no one will have Jerusalem as their capital. It will be an international city because of all of the heritage and the religious sites and everything. No one nation should be able to have it for themselves. That was the idea. Palestinians didn't like that idea. Israelis didn't like that idea. So the odds of that happening, I think, are pretty slim. But I think that you could take, based on kind of how it is now, West Jerusalem, let that be the capital for Israel, East Jerusalem as the capital for Palestine. So the status of Jerusalem is a huge issue that would have to be resolved. And among the things you'd have to do in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, is there's massive numbers of Israeli settlers who would have to be pulled out. Now that's not unheard of. There were a bunch of settlers back in 2006-ish in Gaza, and they pulled out. They pulled those settlers out of Gaza, partly out of the reality of the fact that they'd probably all get killed if they stayed, but still, you have to deal with the settler issue. You have to deal with that. Okay, next issue, which is a big one, is the right of return of Palestinian refugees. You've got, in 1948, Israel launched a terrible campaign of extermination against the Palestinians that were there. And the Palestinians, just like the Jews have, the Holocaust is in the general public's mind, the Holocaust is a Jewish thing. The equivalent or something similar for the Palestinians in their minds, in their social conscience, is called the Nakba, which means translates as catastrophe. And so in 1948, when Israel went in and pushed out the Palestinians from 500 villages, just went on a campaign of ethnic cleansing. They hundreds of thousands went this way, and you end up with them stuck across borders in Egypt, in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, and they, after things get locked down, they're stuck and they can't come back. So the something that Israel really opposes is the right of these people to return, especially if they get compensation for the land that Israel stole from them. And so the refugee issue has to be settled. Now, if Palestine has statehood after the fact, you would think, well, they can come in, but Israel's saying, look, there has to be, we could never go along with statehood if we knew that after statehood was granted to Palestine, the refugees would be allowed to return and petition for, compensation for what we stole from them. So the issue of the return of the refugees. And there's one final thing that I'll throw in that I think is also a huge issue. Not huge. It's monumental. And that is Israel. Anytime there's any discussion of a Palestinian state, they say, all right, no military though. Can't have a military because the Palestinians will use it to try and kill us and blah, blah, blah. Well, I would say, given from history, we know that Israel is going to use its military to commit mass atrocity against the Palestinian people. The idea that an independent state would not be allowed to have a military to protect itself from a known aggressor just miles across the border that has come in and slaughtered the people over and over and over, it's a non-starter. Palestine absolutely has to be able to have its own sovereign military to defend itself against Israel. So that's kind of in a nutshell. That's the two-state solution issue. So we need to go back. The consensus seems to be that the two-state solution is the way to go. I've gone back and forth over the years. I kind of thought that the one-state solution was a better idea. But really, the other problem is just the reality of multicultural societies typically don't work when there's kind of parity between different ethnic groups. Usually for a society to be, and this sounds bad, okay? Like, I know this sounds kind of bad, but the historical reality is when you've got a society that does not have a dominant ethnic group, a dominant culture that is like, solidly dominant, you tend to have a whole lot of fighting constantly. Because there's a chance one side or the other can vie for power over one, and so you stay in a state of chaos. I'm not saying this is good here in the United States. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but the reality is 15% of the U.S. population is black. There's not going to be a time anywhere in the near future where we have, 50% blacks, 50% whites. I mean, can you imagine the race wars we would have if that's it? It's a system where, good or bad, there is a degree of, and there's plenty of bad that goes on with having one culture dominant over another. But you look anywhere throughout the world where that's the case, and you have strife. It is very rare to have two ethnic groups of similar proportion and not have constant fighting. So that's another reason why I came around to the idea that the two-state solution is probably better than pushing for the one-state solution, because I think that there would just be ongoing civil strife between the two. Maybe if there was a huge paradigm shift, maybe it would be different. I mean, it was just 100 years ago that Jews and Palestinians were living alongside each other in peace. The Arabs were the definite majority. There was a very small percentage. I think that around 1900, roughly around 1900, Jews owned, like legally owned, 5% of the land in Palestine. But they got along. Yeah, I know. N.J. Cooper says you're defining a supremacy state construct. I know, and that's why I'm saying I think that because that is the reality of how it would work out in Israel Palestine, that it's better to have a two states, an Arab state and a Jewish state. I don't. I wish one was not all Jewish or all Arab. I wish people could get along, but that's just how it goes. I mean, look here in the United States at the trouble that blacks have had, that the trouble that Native Americans have had. I mean, it's just it's the reality of it. You end up with one side living under um, a system of oppression, and we're so much better now than we were years ago, but there's still issues. You look at just our prison system, for example, or our criminal justice system is definitely geared against uh, the black community. Now, I don't mean that everybody's racist toward blacks, but blacks are uh, very much in a lower socioeconomic status. There is going to be more crime in any society, regardless of skin color. When people are very poor, in a state of poverty, you're going to have people turning to what works to bring in the income. And if that means that you're out on the corner selling marijuana, that's what you do. You do what brings in the money. But then you've got the other side saying, no, 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 we're going to criminalize this. And so you have a disproportionate number of crimes. I'm not talking about the violent crimes. I'm talking about the nonviolent criminal offenses. Disproportionately affects the black community. But because of poverty and everything else that goes along, you end up with a disproportionate number of blacks committing the violent crimes. I mean, statistically, it's still, there are far more violent crimes committed by whites, because there's 85% more whites, or maybe like around 70% or something. But you just end up with that. That's but poverty is going to do that. When I lived in Thailand, it was the exact same thing. The It was a real eye opener for me. I had this kind of screwy, idea that when you're poor, you're probably going to be more humble and more whatever. And I got in there in the slums, and they were crazy. They were crazy. I remember visiting with some people and talking about, they brought up theft. Oh yeah, and I was trying to say, there's ways to work out issues. If someone steals from you, oh no, no, no. If someone steals from me, I'm going to kill them. Like, well, killing is kind of an overreaction to stealing. No, it's not. If someone steals from me, I'm going to kill them. And that's right. And everybody that I was talking to, this whole group of people, they're like, yeah, what's right? Like, looking at me like I'm an idiot. Like I'm from another planet. Like, to them, that kind of law of the jungle, that was the way to go. So every society that I've been to, the poverty class does tend to have, but they are also compelled by circumstances to have a unique. You can't take some middle class person like me and expect me to fully empathize or understand with what's going on with somebody who's out there living in abject poverty, literally eating dogs. which I did quite a few times actually, but not because I was too poor to afford food. I just ate dogs because that's what they fed me. But anyway, sorry, I don't know how I got on that tangent. But anyway, this issue with the Palestinians is not going to be resolved by Israel's bombardment and their ethnic cleansing. They'll kill a bunch of them. They'll kill thousands, but they're not going to get rid of the problem. You can make them homeless. That's not going to get rid of the problem. So if you want to deal with the problem, then you've got to deal with it politically. The problem is getting to the point that they feel compelled to engage in political dialogue, negotiation. Israel does not feel like it needs to. And why should it? Look at how they keep doing this over and over and over. They get away with it because the United States, we're bodyguards. We let them get away with it. And it's not just you hear me talk a lot about 2008 and 2014, the cold-blooded assaults on Gaza that killed in 2008. I think it was about 1,400 civilians that they killed in a matter of 3 weeks. Roughly the same amount of time that this current cycle has been going on. So that's but same thing. 2008, then 2014 did the same thing. I think it was 2000 something people killed that time. But those numbers are nothing compared to, you go back to 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon. They killed 20,000 people. 20,000 people with an additional 30,000 casualties. You would think that a country that goes and attacks its neighbor and kills 20,000 people, that the international community would do something about it. Nope. 2008, nope. 2014, nope. So here we are in this current rage that Israel's in. If things go this time the way that it has every other time, you'll have the United Nations, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, all the different groups will come out and say and publish their reports, and the reports will all have the evidence. It's always Israel denies everything, but then the evidence comes out and all the references, all the sources that proves Israel was engaged in vast numbers of war crimes, and Israel's going to say, so what? What are you going to do about it? What's your report going to do to me? 6 years from now, we're going to go back and we're going to kill twice as many. And what are you going to do then? Same thing you've done all the other times. You're going to be pissy and say things, and we're just going to laugh as the United States government sends us another $10 billion when we are running an annual surplus year after year after year, and we don't need the money, while Americans are over there barely paying their bills, living with massive inflation. We're going to keep taking their money because their politicians are in our pockets, and they're not going to do a damn thing to stop us. So that's why with this thing started, even though I was not really wanting to come back and do videos again, at least not yet, I had to, because this current time, you have to make use of the momentum that you have. They are slaughtering Gazans. The first thing we have to do is get them to stop. But they've already gone too far this time. They've already gone so far that there will be repercussions. But only if enough people stay angry long enough to demand that something happen. It is my hope that this is significant enough of a mass murder catastrophe. There's enough people showing interest this time around that I did not see back in 2014. I felt very alone back then in trying to talk about this. But this time around, there's so much more momentum. what they've done has shown the whole world it can't continue like this. Something has to change. And Americans, I see Raheem 856 says the Ukraine war and Israel situation is connected. Americans at this point, I think they're starting to get tired. Now, it's not easy to take people that feel so full of pride and toughness in supporting a war to get them to settle down and see how stupid they are. Right now, it's the Democrats who are like all gung-ho for the Ukraine war. But it was largely the Republicans that were gung-ho about the Iraq war and subsequent war on terror attacks on Libya and Sudan and Syria and everywhere. And I couldn't convince many people back then with the Iraq war. I tried. I spoke out. I mean, there were plenty of people that came around and saw things that they didn't see before when some, pointed it out to them. But the masses of people, they were not going to budge. Kind of like you're not going to change the Democrats' minds on Ukraine. They simply hate Russia too much because they think that Russia, through the election to Trump, that they undermined Hillary and gave the election to Trump. So they hate Putin. They hate Putin for that. You got to blame somebody. So blame Russia. It used to be the Republicans that hated the Russians. It was Ronald Reagan who called the Soviet Union the evil empire. It used to be the I know, because I was one of them growing up in the 80s. I remember it very well. The Republicans were the ones that were anti-Russian. And now, I mean, it's not like the majority of Republicans are pro-Russian, but there's a whole lot more pro-Russian Republicans than there are, and partly because, well, the Democrats are pro-Ukraine, so I'm going to be pro-Russia. I mean, that's part of the reason why. But the other part is, it's just stupid. It's common sense. Why would you want to pick a fight with Russia? There's no reason to. Especially on behalf of such a corrupt regime as Ukraine. And the Nazi battalions, the Azov and everybody that are financed by the Ukrainian oligarchs and their connections to the to the mafia over there. But anyway, they technically they were anti-Soviet in the 80s. And I was very much against the Soviet Union, although my attitudes have changed because I see now how much propaganda, looking back, with experience, I can look back and see how much of it was a lot of it was warmongering and fear mongering for the benefit of the armaments industry. Yeah. Mr. Darwish says unstable Middle East is very profitable to certain individuals. Absolutely. Making a literal killing, some people, and some corporations making a ton of money. Remember how after the Iraq war, what did we do? We went in there. It made no sense. We just bombed the hell out of Iraq. Even after Saddam Hussein was deposed. We kept bombing their infrastructure. And then what happens? Here comes Enron. I mean, not Enron. Here comes Halliburton in to rebuild the infrastructure, making massive, massive amounts of money. Let's, all pretend like we don't know that Dick Cheney was the former CEO of Halliburton, not that long ago. Let's pretend that we don't know that Bush Jr. and his dad are close personal friends with the fat cats and the oil companies that were sending in to plumb the oil and steal it from Iraq. It's the same now. Same now. People are profiting off of the business of war. And the solution is not, well, let's get rid of Biden and then Trump will be better, because then there's no end. You don't get into the presidency unless you are a puppet of more powerful interests. It won't happen. Trump, Biden, I don't have to tell you, you can see it is happening right now in real time as Biden's out there shilling on behalf of the weapons industry and also the U.S. Federal Reserve that's providing the money for all this. Biden's out there calling for $100 billion on top of everything else that we've already been fleeced for. But you skip back and Trump was doing the same thing, just for different groups. It wasn't on behalf of Ukraine. It was on behalf of Israel and primarily Saudi Arabia. And, it just, whoever is the president 4 years from now, 8 years from now, it's going to be the same thing over and over and over. These people are all in league with the military industrial complex. That's how it goes. So don't ever put your faith in any of these politicians. They're all dirty. They're all corrupt. They're all wicked. They're all morally reprehensible. Don't wave the flag of these people. It makes no sense. They're not on our side. They don't give a damn about you. They don't care about you at all. Outside of how you can be used and manipulated to enrich them and benefit them. They're skilled at saying the right things. They'll tickle your ears with the things that you want to hear. They know the applause lines to use. They know the phrases and the mottos, and they know the dog whistles to blow, depending on which faction you're in politically. That's what they're trained to do. And so don't trust these people. Don't trust these politicians. Lawyer for the People says, I've heard that we have 900 known foreign military throughout the world. We do. We've got over 900, and this has been the case since the so-called war on terror started in the early 2000s. We already had hundreds of military bases throughout the world, but it got up to over 900 military bases that we have, and we're not tearing them apart. That's one thing that I think that Trump probably, because of the lack of profitability, probably would have tried to scale back. But, Trump got in there and he found out the same thing that everyone else does. He's not in charge. The deep state is in charge. The bureaucracy that is entrenched, that does not care, who's president every 4 years, because they're going to be there long after you're gone. And so they make deals with the ones that matter. And so we have this nexus, a conspiracy between the Council on Foreign Relations is the policy writing arm of this new world order. The rich elitists. The Council on Foreign Relations is a Rothschild originated think tank. They write the policies. They give it to the U.S. State Department. The State Department will encode it as official U.S. policy regarding, foreign affairs, foreign issues. If the targeted side, the country, does not comply, you send in the CIA, which is the paramilitary wing of the Council on Foreign Relations, is the CIA. What they do is they go in and they soften up a country and get them compliant with whatever the new policy is that the CFR has given to the U.S. State Department to implement. And if that country does not go along with it, then the CIA goes into terrorism mode, and they start undermining the country. They'll either, you try what works first. You send in your honeypots, see if you can compromise people sexually, see if you can blackmail them, whatever you need to do, key figures. But if that's not sufficient, then you use the CIA to start funding the proxies that are already there, that already have grievances, back them, and then build them up with your weapons, your money, and then send them at the target and flip the government. They tried to do that to Bashar al-Assad in Syria. They tried to depose him using ISIS, and also in Iraq. Thank goodness Iranian General Qasem Soleimani came over there and was like, and he whipped ISIS's ass, for which he earned a cruise missile dinner that Netanyahu talked Trump into carrying out. The reason that Trump hates Netanyahu now is because, well, primarily because Netanyahu's getting positive press coverage. He's seen as a tough guy, but it goes back to Trump had done everything he could to kiss Israel's butt, thinking that that's how you get the Jewish vote and the Jewish money, was his thinking, and doing all this for Israel, doing all his poses, his bro poses with Netanyahu, them hugging and everything. Remember, before Biden's disgusting hug display, Trump was doing all his too, kissing Netanyahu's ring. But Netanyahu goes in and he takes Mossad logistical intelligence, gives it to Trump and his people, and says, you really got to show strength. You got to be a wartime president. Get out there and strike this guy, Soleimani. He's a terrorist, but even worse, he's the one that the world is kind of crediting over here with being the real person that defeated ISIS. And Trump, he doesn't want to be showing up, so he's like, yeah, all right, fine, let's go kill this guy. Let's kill this Soleimani. So they set it up. Israel has provided the exact location, because they've got their Mossad operatives there on the ground. It happened in Iraq. Soleimani's convoy is going out, but the night before the strike, Netanyahu pulls out of it. It was his idea, and he's like, no. And so right now Trump went forward with it, did the strike, and then got in trouble for it. He lost a lot of face over it, because it was such a provocative move. It so enraged the Iranian people, they were ready for war. I mean, you saw it. Well, maybe you saw it. Millions of people were in the streets screaming for war. And it was so bad. The reaction was so bad. Trump had to agree to let Iran, and they're doing this all through back channels, because neither side really wanted full-scale war, but Iran could not let this go without, reprisal. They had to. You cannot be accountable to your people and do nothing. I mean, that would have been the end of the regime, the Iranian regime. The people would have overthrown the government. So, backdoor agreement. Iran is going to strike U.S. bases over there, a U.S. base. Big strike. But they'd give advance notice to the United States first, so that they could pull the troops back, so they don't nobody gets killed. Because if anyone gets killed, now you've got a bigger issue where you might have to go to war. And so they did it. Iran struck, and allegedly hundreds of U.S. soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries from the concussions of these missile strikes and everything. But anyway, did Trump retaliate after that? No. Iran attacked a U.S. base and injured hundreds of U.S. soldiers, and Trump didn't do anything back. That's because he's not in charge. Same with Biden. Biden's not in charge. I mean, there are things that these figureheads can do, good and bad, that they can do. But ultimately, the big decisions, it's not theirs to make. That's not how it works. I mean, think about it. Every single politician campaigns saying on foreign policy, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Barack Obama, I'm going to be the peace president. I promise to be the peace president. Just months into office, he hasn't done anything yet, and he gets a Nobel Prize for peace, right? And then he turns around and arms ISIS and approves the NATO strike on Muammar Gaddafi's convoy in Libya, so that the mercenaries, the Libyan mercenaries, could go in and kill him. And then after, they've done the dirty work, those mercenaries that were on the ground in Libya doing the dirty work for the United States, we sent them, the CIA routed them around up into Iraq and Syria. And then all of the weapons that we had given these mercenaries to use to overthrow Gaddafi, we took those up to the CIA site, black site in Benghazi, which was a mile away from the U.S. Embassy. And we start a rat line from the port of Benghazi, Libya, going up to the CIA base in southern Turkey on the Syrian border, where the fighters who had them before, they go up there, and the weapons are brought down. Recep Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is totally on board with this. And so you've got these mercenaries, and they have merged with the existing network of Islamists that are there, the Al-Qaeda that was already there. These new mercenaries merge, and together they form a new entity called ISIS, the Islamic State of, some ISIL or ISIS, Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIL, which is the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, which is that region. And then the CIA goes and uses all of the, directs ISIS with logistical support and everything. The Mossad is providing logistical support. When ISIS fighters are being injured, they were getting treatment down from Israel. We bandage them up and send them back out to keep fighting. And so what happened was some of the fighters, some of the rival fighters that were still down in Libya, they knew that gun running was going on. They thought that it was going out of the U.S. Embassy. They thought that's where the weapons were. So that's why they attacked the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi, set it on fire, killed the U.S. ambassador. And then you end up with some of the CIA contractors. These weren't actual CIA agents. They were mercenaries, contract mercenaries that were over at the CIA annex. And they come join the fight, at the U.S. Embassy. And so you've got the book and then the movie 13 Hours based on that. And it repeats the propaganda that Hillary Clinton's State Department put out about what happened. They falsely claim that what happened is that there was a little movie made making fun of Prophet Muhammad. And so these people got outraged and attacked. That is not what happened. They were going after the guns that the CIA was running. They just hit the wrong spot. They didn't know the right spot to hit. The secret CIA annex is where the weapons were. And in the process, killed the U.S. ambassador. And of course, Hillary Clinton, who previously had been cheering about, the death of Gaddafi. We came, we saw, he died, ha ha ha, cackle like a witch. You remember that? Well, now she's in panic mode because there are cables, emails from the State Department, from her personally, there to the ambassador. And so this is well known. This is what's going on. The CIA and the State Department work together to fulfill the goals of the Council on Foreign Relations. Hillary Clinton's the one who said on camera at a CFR event when they moved their headquarters from, I think they were in New York. They moved it over to Washington D.C., close to the State Department, and Hillary Clinton went and spoke to him and said, "Hey, we're so glad that you're closer. Now I don't have to go so far to get my marching orders." I mean, she said this on camera like an idiot. I don't know if she. It was a big slip, but anyway. So she had to come up with a story, and then she erased all of her, erased the emails, the thing that Trump talked about all the time, the server, and you wiped your whatever. But he never could really articulate why it was a problem. It was just like, oh yeah, she deleted emails, and somehow that's bad. But he never really got into saying why. That it was covering up CIA gun running, because he knew not to criticize those guys. There was never any doubt in my mind Trump wasn't going to get in there and get rid of the deep state. You can't get rid of the deep state. It can't be done. It's like stage 4 cancer. It's like a doctor who says, "Here, take this pill. I'm going to get rid of your stage 4 cancer that's spread through all of your lymph nodes in your whole body, and it's in your brain and your stomach." You can't get rid of it. You can't get rid of the deep state. It is as much a part of the way of life of the government as anything that you ever were taught in school. In fact, it is probably more real than the crap we see on C-SPAN with the members of Congress goofing off, passing their stupid bills on this and that back and forth that don't matter. Except when they're sending hundreds of billions of dollars to corrupt regimes and everything to kill masses of children. So anyway, hey, lawyer for the people, don't let your kids kill you. You take it easy, brother. It was good seeing you tonight. Thanks for your help. In fact, I think I'm here in just a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. It's almost 1 a.m. Kristen Metter, Chuck Baldwin offers a book on his website called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. It's a must read if you want the history summed up fast. I'll have to check it out. I'll have to look at it. But anyway, I've ranted long enough. Is there anything, put in the chat, is there anything that you want me to go on about here at the end? I would like to, I haven't asked for it, but I would like to ask, since nobody can super chat me, if a few of you, and I don't want it to have to be the same people over and over, but if anybody out there has enjoyed this broadcast, if there's anything new you've learned or whatever, paypal.me/blackstoneintel, or even better, sign up as a patron, patreon.com/blackstoneintel. Chuck White asks, what do you think of Seymour Hersh's piece on Netanyahu pulling IDF away from Gaza just before the attack? I haven't read it, but I'm going to print screen here so I can go look that up later on. I'll read it. Seymour Hersh has always been really good. He wrote the Samson option, exposing Israel's nuclear weapons program that they had been hiding for so long. The thing that Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, who was a Mossad asset, he played an instrumental role in stealing secrets, nuclear secrets for Israel. That's one of the reasons they had to assassinate him and throw him overboard after they killed him, drown him, or make it look like a drowning. Four Trumpets says, Qasem Soleimani, what about him? Now, I can't speak to everything about him, but I do know that he was beloved by not just the Iranians, the Persian people, but Arab peoples. They loved him because he was out there organizing against the U.S. Backed proxies, the CIA proxies that were trying to overthrow Syria. I mean, the horrible, horrible people, these Takfiri maniacs. Qasem Soleimani organized the forces against that, and so he deserves credit for that. Hey, lawyer for the people says, I'm going to send you a package. Hey, you know what? Right after you write "Love you, brother," boom, and then you say, "I'm going to send you a package." I'm going to make sure and tie a string to the package and pull it from around the corner. Open it that way. My wife was talking about you the other day. I won't tell you what she said here. It was a positive thing, but we were joking about something. Anyway, I'll have to tell you. I'll have to tell you in private in case it comes across um, not appropriate. It's not bad. It's not bad. Uh, NJ Cooper says, "Good job, Blackstone. It's hard to have these adult conversations from a human perspective." I mean, this is awful stuff. There's no good way to spin this stuff. It's horrible. I mean, we're talking about some of the worst stuff happening in the world today. And so their tempers are very hot. People have strong opinions. There's plenty of people who are absolutely brainwashed into believing the propaganda that they've been fed. It's so much a part of their belief system. It's in their bones. You can't separate them from their radical beliefs on either side, but primarily on the Zionist side. I mean, to know what's happening and come in here in a message room and proudly talk about nuking Gaza. I mean, that kind of stuff. I mean, these people are morons. Some of them are just trolls doing what trolls do, trying to be provocative. But, these Zionists, they believe this crazy crap. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm going to go ahead and end this stream. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I appreciate your participation. I'll have to go back and skim through and read comments. I only glance over from time to time and miss a lot of it during the live portion. But I appreciate your participation. I'm very grateful to uh, Lawyer for the People, Cali Girl, Boulder Angel, Crypto King, everybody out there. And I'm sorry, flick off for everybody that I miss who helped out with moderation, keeping things under control. Thank you very much. And I will talk to you guys next time. Today's Saturday, tomorrow's Sunday. If something really significant happens, then I'll jump back on and live stream tomorrow. Otherwise, it'll probably be Monday before I come back do it again. Anyway, thank you so much. Bless all of you. Thanks for caring about this stuff and spending some time with me this evening. And I'll talk to you later.